Hey everyone, welcome to another video from Southern Indiana Sawmill. In this video, we're going to talk about something that Wood-Mizer has come out with recently, and that is the Wood-Mizer wood cookie cutting jig. Well, is this jig worth it? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. I've got some statistics for us as we start to think through this Wood-Mizer cookie jig. First, it comes in at $495. So, $500 bill is what this is going to cost you to get this jig. The weight is significant. It's a 130-pound jig, and it can cut 20 inches maximum width, and that's if you put it on the bigger sawmills. The smaller machines, you're not going to be able to get all 20-inch width capacity out of that, so you're going to be probably closer to 16 inches on those. And interestingly enough, one of the things they say is that if you have smaller pieces, you're going to have a harder time clamping those on there. Now, they don't recommend putting anything on the machine taller than 24 inches. And so those are all things to think about in regards to the safety and the use of this particular jig. Okay, so you've got a sawmill and you're thinking, what can I do to make this thing a little bit more versatile? And you look out at the market and you see what is selling, what is not selling, and you see that there's a trend that has been happening, and that is the wood cookie trend. Well, what is a wood cookie? Well, most of you watching this video probably already know what that is, but a wood cookie is simply a log that's been turned on its end and then sliced against the grain. And then you have the disc from that log. That's the wood cookie. Well, Wood-Mizer obviously sees an opening in the market for wood cookies, and so they've created this brand new jig. To sort of help us think through, is this a good investment or not, and is this a good tool or not, is to look at it from two different directions. And that's the classic pros and cons. And so the first thing I want to do is talk about the pros or the reasons you might want to have a jig like this for your sawmill. And as I do in all my videos, I just want to let my bias be fully known. As you can see, I'm wearing a Wood-Mizer hat. I'm not sponsored by Wood-Mizer. Wood-Mizer doesn't pay me a dime. They never have. They've never sent me a t-shirt, never sent me a hat, or anything like that. But I've given them quite a bit of money. That's not a gripe. It's just something, I'm just letting you know I'm not paid off, okay? The first pro that I see, as it is with any Wood-Mizer product, this thing is very sturdily made. It's very stout. It uses thick gauge steel throughout. So this appears to be a tool that is going to last you for your entire life. All Wood-Mizer products are made this way, and it's one of the reasons that I'm a big supporter of them. The frames on their machines, even their cheaper machines, are better made than the other machines that are out there. Again, I am biased. If you want to go back and see another video that I've made comparing Sawmill videos, you'll see also that that's one of the strengths that I put on the Wood-Mizer side. Another positive strength that I see of this jig is that jigs need to be versatile and they need to be able to be taken on and off the machine really easily. And it seems to be the case with this, which means even if you don't have a Wood-Mizer sawmill, you're going to be able to make this compatible with what you have. And so you're going to want to put this thing on for a few hours, cut a bajillion wood cookies, and then be able to take it off so you can get back to sawing regular lumber. So versatility is another very important thing, and there's many different ways that you can clamp this onto the machine. Now, one thing that I talk about often when I talk about Wood-Mizer is that when you buy a Wood-Mizer product, and this is another pro, you get Wood-Mizer tech support. Now you're saying, what could possibly go wrong with something as simple as this cookie jig? Well, everything has parts, and everything eventually breaks and needs fixed. And you want to make sure that you can get those parts. And so, this being a Wood-Mizer product, there's a very good chance that years down the road, you're still going to be able to buy the parts for this thing when it breaks. So, Wood-Mizer tech support coming with the tool is a big plus in my book. Now, one thing I want to put in here that I see as a pro, but they have not put this in their official video, I think they missed a little bit on the advertising on this, is that this jig can be multifunctional. It can be used for many different uses. And I'll tell you, one of the uses is oftentimes you get people with requests to cut down really small pieces that you otherwise couldn't fit on your mill. And so you could take a small block and clamp it in the jig, and you could resaw pieces off that, whether it be for turning blocks or veneer on already kiln-dried wood or something like that. So it can be used multifunctionally for many different things. Now, the last pro that I have, the last good reason to buy a jig like this, is that it's a good way to turn $1 on something that might otherwise end up in the firewood pile. So you have something that right now is worth nothing, you put it on the jig, you take a couple minutes to make a few cuts, you turn it over, you sell a few of these for a few bucks each, you make 20 to 40 to 100 bucks, who knows, off of a few wood cookies. And that's a good way to have a little bit of more if you will, passive income on the sawmill. And I know that's not the appropriate use of that term, but it's not normal lumber sales. It's something else. And so it's another way to add a little bit of revenue into your sawmilling business. All right, so that's all the pros. You're probably thinking that first part sounded something like a Wood-Mizer advertisement. I can assure you it's not. I love covering Wood-Mizer products though, and you all know that. So now let's talk about the cons, or some things that I think could be negatives about this particular jig. Now the first thing and the most glaring thing that I see that is a con of this jig is in the design itself. Now let me tell you what I mean. Because of the multifunctionality of this tool, that is, they want this to be able to clamp onto an LT10 or an LT15 all the way up to an LT70. And because of that, in the hydraulic mills, they overlook the single greatest tool on the mill, which is the hydraulic log clamp itself. Your average Wood-Mizer LT40 can cut up to 28 inches wide. So you're losing 8 inches of potential width of cut by having this jig on like an LT40 and above machine. Now that's a problem. And the reason that this is so is because of the design of the machine. You have a jig that you have to place on top, and then the clamp is in, and then you have the other clamp over here which also has to go in. Because of those extra inches on the sides, you lose cut capacity. And so what would have been better for the bigger machines is a jig that actually sat flush down into the machine and then utilize the clamping device that is already in the machine. And with that bigger, stronger clamping device, you have less need to worry about, is this thing going to wobble off when I start cutting? The 24-inch height that they recommend could be increased with a stronger clamping pressure. How do I know this? Because I've done this. Now, this is not a brag, but several years ago, I made a wood cookie cutting jig that was very simple. I just used some pine and some MDF, and I'll show you some pictures of that right now. And you'll see how you can utilize the log clamp with a jig like this. And you can clamp it on in several different ways. And so I think that there are ways that they could have been maybe a little bit more versatile in appealing to people with different models of machines. For me, a guy with an LT40 hydraulic, I'm probably not interested in the wood cookie jig for that very reason. There's just other ways that you can clamp things on there. And quite honestly, almost every person that I've ever had contact me and say, hey, could you cut me some wood cookies, is a person who has something that is bigger than 20 inches. And so for that reason alone, it's a little bit difficult to convince me that $500 is really good to spend on something when I know that my machine is capable of so much more without the jig. And so if you hear what I just said, I kind of gave about 3 cons. The first is that the resaw capacity is not enough for the bigger machines. Secondly, because of the versatility of the machine, it's not designed properly for the bigger machines. Thirdly, you can't use the hydraulics that are already on your machine to run this jig. So all of those to me are things that are kind of weaknesses in terms of the overall design, and some things that might dissuade you from purchasing this jig. Now, another thing that I see as kind of a weakness is the actual clamping mechanism on the jig itself. Now, the way that you have to use this is you have to have an impact wrench or a normal wrench, and you have to ratchet down. There's obviously a screw drive gear that comes and clamps in on the cookie. And because of this, you need another extra tool to be able to run the jig. Now, I know that most people that have a sawmill and are in this kind of a thing probably already have those tools, so that's not a big deal, but it's one more thing that you have to bring down to the sawmill. The other thing is the time that it takes then to clamp on and clamp off. And I know that if you use an impact wrench, that's going to be fairly quick, but if you don't have that, if your battery dies on your drill or whatever, then you're kind of stuck to just using your brute hand strength again. I'm just going to say for $495, which is a polite way of saying $500, I would expect a little bit better clamping mechanism. You know, here's a suggestion. Maybe a quick clamp, a cantilever quick clamp or something like that, like has been used on the older mills, on the manual mills for years and years. Why not incorporate that into the mill? You know, that would be a really slick way and simple and fast and efficient to clamp it in there other than using this screw device. So again, that would probably be cheaper too to design and machine, and you could cut your price point a little bit with something like a cantilever clamp. So just a suggestion. And so the grand question is this: should you buy this wood cookie cutting jig or not? Well guys, obviously I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I'm going to tell you this though, for me, probably not. I see a lot of other ways to use the versatility of the machine to cut wood cookies than a jig like this, for the reasons I've already mentioned. But on the other side of the coin, I also see a lot of uses for something like this, and it makes it very fast and very efficient to cut wood cookies. You know, there's woodworking businesses that the majority of their business is jigs and fixtures and selling things that, yeah, you could probably make yourself, you know, with either make it with wood, or if you had a welder, you could make one yourself or something like that. And they'd rather spend the money, have somebody else make a jig like that, and then be able to just throw it on and use it. And so I get that, and I think I see what Wood-Mizer is going for here. Wood-Mizer keeps coming up with new ways to try to be versatile in today's market. Now, here's what's interesting. If you try to order a Wood-Mizer sawmill as of the making of this video, March 2021, you are going to be waiting until November or December to get your mill. And so they are extremely backed up, at least in the sawmill department, and so their strategies seem to be working. And I guess we'll see. If you start seeing lots of YouTube videos popping up of so-and-so using their new cookie cutter jig, that would be great. I'm going to throw the idea out there to Wood-Mizer. If you want to maybe prove me wrong on some of the cons that I've said about this thing, go ahead and send me a Wood-Mizer cookie cutting jig, and I would be happy to place it in a video and to show this thing working, and perhaps it will change my mind, and I would love to do that. And so there's my shot in the dark to Wood-Mizer, that I'm always willing to try out your products if you want to send them to me for free. Well everyone, I hope that this video has been helpful for you and helped you to think through, should you get this wood cookie jig or not? And I would be interested to know your polite, kind comments in the comment section below. I want to thank you all for watching and listening to my professional opinion on a lot of these things. As always, I encourage you to go and check out all of my other content on YouTube, and because this is YouTube world, I just want to remind you that if you have not yet subscribed to my channel and you've been watching regularly, I would encourage you to subscribe now. And go ahead and hit the like button, share the video, hit the bell. I don't know, all this stuff that YouTube has on there. Go ahead and do all that for me, would you? I would appreciate it very much. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. God bless you all.